According to experts, a constitutional crisis is unfolding as a result of President Trump's onslaught of executive actions, cutting funding, freezing aid, and ending protections.
The term constitutional crisis brings back the thought of these dark moments in American history, like Watergate or the Civil War. As of now, more than 40 lawsuits have been filed recently by state attorneys, unions, and nonprofits, hoping to block what they call Trump's illegal orders.
So we decided to look into the power of the executive branch to determine if Trump's orders are legal or if he's overstepped.
And whether we can expect Congress or the courts to intervene and enact the checks and balances that define our government.
Kicking off the Is This Legal docket, Trump signed an executive order to cancel the student visas and deport all foreign students who participate in pro-Palestinian protests.
The White House released a fact sheet calling the protesters Hamas sympathizers, saying to all the resident aliens who joined in the pro-jihadist protests, "We put you on notice. Come 2025, we will find you and we will deport you." And of course, everyone has their own opinions on these university protests, and we're not even going to get into that, but the right to protest is protected under the First Amendment, so this threat of deportation is alarming.
Yeah, civil rights advocates warn that this unfairly paints largely peaceful student protesters as terrorist sympathizers. The Knight First Amendment Institute said the First Amendment protects everyone in the United States, so deporting non-citizens on the basis of their political speech would be unconstitutional.
And this order is intended to fight anti-Semitism in the U.S., but it's important to note that there was a rise in anti-Semitism and Islamophobic threats and violence in the U.S. after Hamas attacked Israel in 2023.
Well, people are pointing out that this order closely mirrors the Heritage Foundation's Project Esther, which is a right-wing blueprint to target the pro-Palestinian movement under what they call a national strategy to combat anti-Semitism. Remember, the Heritage Foundation also released Project 2025, and its author was just sworn in as director of the Office of Management and Budget.
Pro-Palestinian advocates are also bracing themselves for legislation that would give the Treasury the power to strip nonprofits of their tax-exempt status if it's believed to support terrorism. And this is without the Treasury needing any proof or evidence at all. And so critics think that this is a chilling indicator for the future of advocacy groups in this country.
No matter what you think of the Palestinian cause, the First Amendment violation clearly makes this illegal.
This administration is riding further down this slippery slope because last week, of course, Trump announced that he wants to seize, occupy, and rebuild Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing. And I don't want to be cute, I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something that could be so bad, this could be so magnificent.
And Trump has had his eye on Gaza for a while. He's talked about the beautiful weather and the sea and wanting to build glass towers over there. Actually, in 2020, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, even proposed remodeling Gaza for tourism. But Trump only now recently announced his desire to take over after his Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, described the horrific conditions over there that he observed from high up in his plane.
And everyone was shocked when Trump made this announcement. Even Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, who was sitting next to him, looked shocked. Apparently, even Trump's own senior White House officials had no idea this was coming because they haven't had any meetings or budget or anything to prepare for it.
And nations around the Arab world like Egypt and Jordan, even U.S. ally Saudi Arabia, are extremely opposed to this idea. And countries around the world are saying that it would be a serious violation of international law because, obviously, if Trump wants to rebuild there, the 2 million Palestinians that currently live there would have to be forcibly moved somewhere else.
Right, and any mass forcible displacement violates the Geneva Conventions, so it would be an international crime. And experts have warned this process would also mean ethnic cleansing, so the UN called the whole idea unlawful, immoral, and completely irresponsible.
And in the days following this announcement, Trump has made a lot of confusing statements. Like he mentioned last Friday that Gaza would be given to the U.S. by Israel at the conclusion of fighting, but the UN's top court has ruled that Israel is actually an illegal occupier of Palestinian territory, so they don't really have the authority to hand over Gaza to some random foreign country.
And people were questioning this use of taxpayer funds since the UN estimates it will cost $80 billion to rebuild Gaza. But Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said that no U.S. tax dollars will be used. So who would pay for this?
And then, of course, there's so much damage to Gaza already. It's been this war-torn area for over a year. Apparently, 69% of structures there have been damaged. There's 50 million tons of rubble, which is 12 times the size of the Great Pyramids. And everyone assumed that the US military would carry out this operation, but Trump said that no soldiers would be needed. So who? It's just like invisible people with invisible money.
Yeah, there's a lot of unanswered questions, and most people seem to think this plan won't even come to fruition.
And so even if it doesn't happen and it was just this like idea that was carelessly thrown around, it did do a lot of damage. I mean, at the bare minimum, it disrupted decades of foreign policy work in the Middle East.
Well, let's hope for Trump's sake he was just thinking out loud, because this one seems cut and dry illegal.
Next up, I'm sure we've all heard how Elon Musk's team DOGE accessed the US Treasury's central payment system, which handles tax refunds, social security benefits, veteran benefits, and more.
And this is problematic because Elon Musk is considered a special government employee, meaning he didn't go through Senate confirmation. So giving him access to millions of Americans' social security and bank account numbers is a big risk, according to data safety experts.
Attorneys say that with this information, DOGE could illegally freeze federal funds, blocking payments to Americans for healthcare, childcare, and other essential programs. And this sounds like a crazy hypothetical, like why would DOGE freeze all of these programs? Well, Elon has made his thoughts very clear on what he thinks of excessive government spending.
So obviously 19 Democratic attorneys general from around the country sued DOGE in federal court. The New York Attorney General said this unelected group led by the world's richest man is not authorized to have this information. And the Connecticut Attorney General said this is the largest data breach in American history.
And the central argument against this is that it would violate the Privacy Act of 1974, the Federal Information Security Modernization Act, and the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, as well as taxpayer privacy under the Internal Revenue Code.
Oh, just those 4 laws. Even the president doesn't have the ability to authorize access to tax return information since it's among the most protected federal data. And these strict restrictions were added after the Nixon administration was caught using tax records to target political opponents.
Critics are also worried about giving a billionaire whose companies like Tesla and SpaceX have these huge government contracts access to such sensitive information. But on the other side, proponents of this argue that Elon's team actually needs this data to root out inefficiencies and reduce government spending, since that is the entire job.
Well, a federal judge last week blocked Elon's team from accessing the sensitive information. It's just a preliminary injunction, so we'll have to watch and see how it plays out.
Safe to say that the verdict for this one is illegal. Next on the list is all the fallout from Trump's 90-day freeze on foreign assistance. And you've all definitely heard like bits and pieces, but we're going to iron it all out for you here.
So on Trump's first day in office, he ordered a 90-day freeze on all $70 billion going to U.S. foreign assistance programs to assess their efficiency and alignment with U.S. foreign policy.
Critics say that this executive order will cause a humanitarian catastrophe and undermine America's reliability and standing in the world. It just went into effect and it's already causing so much damage. In South Africa, researchers were actually forced to shut down an HIV prevention trial, leaving women with experimental implants inside their bodies without medical supervision.
In Bangladesh, food assistance for refugees will be cut in half in March and completely run out in April. And in Djibouti, warehouses are stocked with next month's food supply, but since truck drivers have been fired, the food will probably go bad before it can reach those in need.
This freeze touches truly every corner of the world since the U.S. is the largest provider of humanitarian assistance in the world. The freeze has stopped clinical trials in Britain and schools in Afghanistan, seed vaults in Haiti, and even mine clearing in Cambodia. Except, interestingly, the freeze does not apply to weapons support for countries like Israel and Egypt, although it falls under like the foreign assistance umbrella.
And despite all the chaos, this order is legal, or at least part of it. Trump has the power to freeze general foreign assistance, but what he can't do is dismantle USAID.
So USAID oversees $40 billion of the $70 billion that is spent on foreign assistance, and that money is appropriated by Congress. So only Congress can like move it, abolish it, or consolidate it. Trump legally can't touch the organization.
And we're sure you've heard some of the wild claims about where this USAID money is going.
Through USAID over the past several years, these are some of the insane priorities that organization has been spending money on. $1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces, $70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia.
But a lot of it is misinformation, like USAID sending $50 million to Gaza to buy condoms for Hamas. That is false. Funds in Gaza were to operate field hospitals, treat malnutrition, deliver babies, and perform surgeries.
And a lot of this misinformation is stemming from like a weird choice in framing. So, for example, Speaker Mike Johnson claimed a lot of these funds were going to Nepal to encourage the spread of atheism. But the funds that he was referring to were actually going to programs to expand religious freedom protections.
Even Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who is now the acting administrator of USAID, said that only 10% of the USAID budget reaches people, but in reality, over 92% of it does.
And as a part of Trump's 90-day pause on USAID operations, thousands of USAID workers were placed on paid leave, and staffers around the world were told to come home from their missions. But hours before it was going to go into effect, a judge temporarily blocked it.
The judge, who is actually a Trump appointee, ruled on a lawsuit brought by the largest union representing federal workers and will actually hear expedited arguments tomorrow.
So Trump's involvement in USAID is illegal.
So we bet a lot of you are asking, why is President Trump doing so much so fast, potentially overstepping the power of the presidency? And beyond just believing in those actions, the Democrats have another theory. Trump's first-term tax cuts for households making over $450,000 a year are set to expire at the end of this year. And if Republicans want to extend them another 5 or 10 years, which reporting says they do, it would cost the government $4.6 trillion. So they need to find that money elsewhere, basically. Listen to this viral clip of AOC.
And right now, what is happening is that all of these tax cuts that billionaires and millionaires have been just getting high off the hog on over the last couple of years are now about to run dry. If they do not reauthorize them, if they do not extend them, and not only if they do not extend them, but ideally they want to add to them. And in order to extend them, you need to find $4 trillion. Well, where do you look? Because historically, in this country, when you need to pay for something, you pay for it with taxes.
Wow, that was a lot. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So next week, we're continuing this list in Is This Legal? Part 2.
Yes, so we're going to get into the stories that you might not have heard of, like sending migrants to Guantanamo Bay and moving trans women to men's prisons and more.